What's up YouTube, and welcome along to another draw along with me. Today's tutorial is this plane window where we're looking out onto a lovely sunset or sunrise from our seat on the plane. If you're new here, I post tutorials every week where you can follow along with my draw along with me's. So please feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you get notified about my new videos every time they go up. With that said, as always, there's a link in the description to the palette so you can follow along with the exact same colours that I use in this tutorial. So as always, let's get started by creating a new canvas. So we're going to come up to the plus and then a custom canvas, and we're going to make sure our width and height is 2500 by 2500 and our DPI is set to 300. So when we create a new canvas, you can download the palette in the description and you'll be able to follow along with the exact same colours that I'm going to use today. And this is our selection for today's design. So straight off the bat, we're going to go to our background colour and we're going to set it to this colour here in the bottom left, which will give us this somewhat dark offset grey. And then we need to create the shapes for our window. So to get started, we're going to, on layer 1, we're going to select white by double tapping in the top left hand corner, and we are going to go to colours, our brush, and then we're going to select monoline. And then what we want to do to get started is we just want to draw a circle in the middle of the screen and hold your pen at the end, which will create an ellipse, but if you pop your finger on the screen you'll get a perfect circle, and roughly around about that size is ideal. And then what we can do is we can drag this up into the, sort of the top left hand corner. You can go to our layers and swipe it to the left and duplicate that layer, and then with your cursor just make sure that snapping is turned on by coming to this little toggle down in the bottom left hand corner. And then what you're going to want to do is with the duplicated layer, just drag it down, make sure the blue lines are both on the left, middle and right, and that means that you've perfectly sort of dragged it down. And something along the lines of that here should be fine. So now what we want to do is create a new layer, and what we want to do is just draw a straight line up this side here, and if you pop your finger on the screen it will do a perfectly straight line as well as upright. And you want to just create a line of some sort like that, and we can just quickly position this with the cursor, making sure the left edge here of our line gets this blue little line here, which means that we've perfectly aligned it to the side of the circle. And you may have to go in and just make some minor erasing like so. Don't worry if it's inside, that's not a problem. And then we want to create one more line both at the top and the bottom. So we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to go to our layers and create a new one, and then drag a line horizontally, pop your finger on the screen so you get a perfect horizontal line, and then with your cursor just drag it into position so it nicely, if you pinch all the way in, you should get this blue line here as well as the blue line straight down the middle. And then you want to zoom out, duplicate that layer and go all the way down to the very bottom and do exactly the same down here too. You could draw a square for this section. Mine didn't seem to want to work correctly, so I'm drawing it out manually. So I duplicate the line and it now perfectly comes down here and then shoots perfectly off like that. And then the last bit for this one is just create one more layer, and you want to just create a vertical line all the way down. Hold your pen at the end and pop your finger on the screen, and roughly like that drag it into position with your cursor, zoom all the way in and just drag it across like so. So you get a nice right edge there, and also a somewhat nice right edge down here. You may have to just go in and erase these corners. So that's like the left hand side of the window shape, which is perfect. And now what we can do is we can just grab all of these layers which we created and pinch them all together, and then we should be able to just drag and drop our colour into all of the different shapes. And now we've got the left hand side, all we want to do is go to our layers, swipe that to the left again, go to cursor, flip horizontal, and then drag it across roughly to about there, so there's a bit of overlap in the middle, and we've got our window shape, which is perfect. And then we can merge those two layers together by also pinching that. So a little bit of work there at the beginning just to get the overall shape, because you can't get a rounded rectangle, but otherwise that's our shape for our window. And I'm just going to make sure it's positioned in the middle by dragging it so it goes across both the orange vertical and horizontal axis. So from there, we want to fill this one in with the second color at the bottom here and drag and drop that into the shape. And then what we want to do is swipe that to the left and duplicate it one more time. Let's fill that in with the third color so we can see the difference. And then we want to go to our uniform and we just want to scale it down a little bit and then drag it into the middle. And what you want to end up with is a nice gap around the outside that is like a perfectly shrunk down version. Now I'm going to shrink it down ever so slightly like that, and I'll let you see how small I went. So this is like the outer frame, and then we've got one more bit of frame as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to swipe that layer to the left again also. Going to go to our colors and select the fourth one, drag and drop that into the shape, and then we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to uniform that down, and then we're going to position that in the middle like so. So now we've got our two outer frames and our window in the middle. So now we've got our sort of setup ready. The only last thing we need to do in terms of the window frame is add in the slide to cover up the window. And what we need to do for that is, if we go to our layers and let's create a new one, let's go to our color picker and select white by double tapping top left, just so you can see the color that we're about to draw with. And again, continuing with the monoline brush under calligraphy, we're just going to draw an ellipse like that. And we're going to make sure by holding on our screen it's a perfect ellipse, and roughly just going to leave it like that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to, and drag and drop your color in, we're trying to achieve a little curved edge here like so, and then we can sort of drag that into position towards the top. And then what we need to do is we obviously need to mask out all the stuff that we don't want. So with this layer, we want to mask it to the inner layer here, not the biggest circle, which is this one. So turn it on and off just to be sure, but this is the one we want to mask it to, and simply tap on that and select the option select, which is selected the pixels of that shape. And then you want to go to layer 4, and all you have to do is tap on it and select the option of mask. And then if you go to your selection and turn it off and collapse your layers, you now get that nice little shader has been perfectly masked to the shape. So now what we can do is we can get started on creating the background content first, and then we can make our way outwards and then add all the different lighting. Now what we want to do is above this layer here, which is the main canvas in the center here for our sky design, I'm going to create a new layer, and we're going to go to our brush library and continuing to use the monoline brush. I'm going to draw a circle in the middle of the screen. Again, hold your pen at the end, which creates an ellipse, and pop your finger on the screen, which will give you a perfect circle. And this is going to be our sun in the sky, and drag and drop the white in. And again, just position it across the orange line down the middle so you make sure it's perfectly centered in the middle of your design. And you want to leave a little bit of a gap between the top, but mainly still in that top half of the window. Next, what you want to do is go to our layers, and we're going to create a new layer above this, our main window frame, and we want to make sure it's clipped to the frame, because now we're going to draw in our clouds. So for this, I'm going to use the correct color to start with, which for this will be the middle color on the second row. And for this, what we want to do is with the monoline brush, we just want to draw some like bouncy lines across the screen, which will be our clouds like so. And make sure some go up and some go down, but ultimately you want to end up with something along that sort of shape there. And then all you need to do is just make sure, as always, like we've done in previous designs, at your end point, continue to draw all the way around until you meet your start point. And then you should be able to drag and drop your color in like so. And because we clip this layer to the frame of this shape here, it nicely fits in that gap there. And we want to repeat that step a couple of times now. So we want to go to our window frame, create a new layer. It will automatically clip itself to the window frame. And again, we're going to draw in another set of clouds, and we're going to draw 5 in total. And we just want to draw in another set of bouncy lines, making sure we leave a gap between the layer that we did originally. And then again, starting at your end point, draw all the way around. You don't have to draw within the boundaries of the frame. and you can just make your way to your start point and drag and drop your colour in like so. Now you'll notice, obviously, because they're the same colour, you're going to start to see them disappear for a second while we continue to add in all the different layers. Go back to our window frame again and create a new layer. This will be our third layer of clouds, and with this one I'm going to draw some bigger ones and maybe some big gaps, and maybe it tails off. And you can continue to hold your brush down right at the end if you've got the space, and go all the way around and meet your start point. Drag and drop your colour in again and repeat the step. We're going to do it twice more. Tap on the layer of the frame, create a new one, it'll automatically clip, and we want to create our next layer of clouds. So try a different angle maybe with this one, so this one swoops in towards the bottom and maybe swoops back up a little bit right towards the end, and then again draw all the way around the outside and meet your starting point. If you don't meet your starting point when you drag the colour in, it will just fill up the whole screen, which lets you know you've left a gap somewhere. And then the final one, create a new layer. Again, it will clip itself automatically. And the last one we want to do here is just draw in our last sort of line of clouds, like so. And this one I've kept less bouncy, kept it relatively smooth. I'm just linking up my shape and drag and drop my colour in, like so. So what we've done there, we've actually built up the 5 layers of clouds underneath, and we can start to, in a second, differentiate them from one another with shading and lighting. So you've got to bear in mind that the first layer that we created at the very bottom here is the layer at the top, and then all the other clouds underneath fall behind. So what if we start on this one here? I mean, the easiest way actually, if you wanted to make sure you can see what you're drawing, just turn off the other 4 layers and it will leave us with the original one. They're still there, you can just turn them back on and off at some point. And what we want to do is we want to tap on that and select the option of alpha lock, which means we can now only draw within the boundaries of our clouds. And we want to go to our colours, and we want to grab this colour here on the left hand side of the second row. And we want to go to our brush library and select airbrushing, and we're going to use the soft brush, and let's bring it down to roughly 17%. That's good size. Maybe ever so slightly smaller, maybe 13, 14. And we want to just shade off this outer edge here, and also the left hand side too. And because this is the bottom layer, we're just going to come across the very bottom edge here, like so. And we want to just make sure we add that nice little bit of sort of darker colour in there. And then while we're on this layer, we're going to switch to the third colour in the second row. And based on where the direction of our sun is, which is straight down, we just want to add in a little bit of a glow. Again, in a circular motion like we've done in all the other tutorials, like so, mainly towards the centre, like that. And we're going to repeat that step now for all the 5 different layers that we created. So we're going to go back to our layers and turn on then the one above. And you can see that's what we ended up with our base colour. And this is what it will turn out like when we've added in the shading again. So let's start again. Let's go to our second row and select the first colour. Keep your brush as is. We're going to go to this second layer here of clouds. Tap on that and select the option of alpha lock, which again means we can only paint within the boundaries of what we drew. And again, we're just going to colour out that right hand side and the left hand side. And eventually you'll get like a nice indistinguishable little sort of bit of colour bleed between the 2 layers. And then you could come across the bottom as well, just to again add some contrast between the light and the dark, but mainly the right hand side and left hand side. And then go back to your colours and select the third colour from the second row, and again in a circular motion add in your lighting towards the centre of the layer, like so. And now we're really building up that nice bit of colour, but again it nicely sort of softly blends into each other on the sides. And repeat the step 3 more times. Let's go to our third layer and select the option of alpha lock. Let's turn it back on so we can see it. Let's go back to our colours and select the first colour in the second row. And again on the right hand side, very lightly, always start lightly. If you go in too hard, you'll just do that. If you start off lightly, you can build the colour up, and likewise on the left hand side here, like so. And then the third colour in the second row, you just want to do the same thing, circular motion in the centre, like so. And let's get this penultimate layer done. So let's turn that on, turn on alpha lock, go to our colours, select the first colour, and again right hand side and left hand side. You don't have to go across the middle here either, you can just leave it if you don't want to, but I like to, because it gives a tiny bit of contrast between the clouds. And then go to the second row, third colour, the yellow, and then just add in that little bit of light in the middle. And finally, the last one, let's turn it back on and go to our options. All you have to do to get to this point, just tap on that and select alpha lock. And then we want to go to our colours, select the third, sorry, I said that again, the first colour in the second row, and on the right hand side let's blur that little bit of colour out, like that. And let's grab the third colour on the second row and just add in a little bit of highlight here, like so. So now we've got our clouds. You could spread this outwards if you really wanted to, because this is technically the closest layer, so you could go further out, but personally I want to keep the light quite central, so I'm not going to make too much light out here, make it so it's very much coming down the middle. And now we've got our clouds, which are done at this point, we can then go in and add in the background colour as well. So with the layer that everything is clipped to, this dark grey, we're going to tap on that and also go to the option of, no, scrap that. So with our background layer here, underneath all our cloud layers, we're actually going to create one new layer. Now you could alpha lock that, but personally I don't like to do that, because if you want to change it or do a blur, I don't like how it personally looks. So I'm going to create a new layer above that background of our window. And now we're going to move up to these colours here in the first row. And what we want to initially do is just grab this orange in the top left hand corner and drag and drop it into frame. It's more of a reddy orange, and that's our sort of base colour. And then what we want to do is move on to the second colour in that, and continuing to use the airbrush, you should have it already selected. Going to increase our brush size to roughly around about that 30% mark, and from the centre we're just going to circular motion so we get a nice little bit of the original colour that we had towards the outside, but in the centre it's now our new colour. And then let's go back to our colours and select the third option, and let's just reduce our brush size down to around about 15-16%, and again in a circular motion in the middle, just around the sun, build up a little bit more of the yellow. And then the final one is this bright yellow, and we're going to continue to do a circular motion in the middle there, which really punches out that sun. Now we could actually go in and add this colour here, the second row, third colour, and really add that into the middle here. I'm actually going to do so and expand that out a little bit more so it overlaps the yellow, because then all the colours are a little bit more consistent. And I'm very happy with that. You could go up to your adjustments at this point and go to Gauge and Blur and select the option Layer, and swipe from left to right, which will blur out your colours, and if you had any sort of fine lines in there, that will fade them out a little bit more. And the final touch I want to do is just go to our second row first colour, which is this darker edge that we used, and again I kind of want to grab the soft brush and up it to roughly about 28%, and just down this left hand side and right hand side just add something a little bit darker, and let's just reduce our brush size down to 15% and just come underneath the window ledge like so, and maybe punch out these darker corners so we get a bit of light mainly focused towards the centre, but it's all faded towards the outer edge. And now what we want to do is obviously add in our plane wing, and then we can move on to the lighting on the outside. So let's go to our layers. This is also going to be a clip layer, so what we want to do above our clouds, you should have your 5 layers of clouds, create a new layer and tap on the option of clipping mask. And let's go back to our brush library and select the option under calligraphy of the monoline, and I'm going to make mine roughly around about 7% for this, and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white so you can see what you're drawing. Your brush size shouldn't matter too much, but the smaller the better, only because if you go too big, you'll get a nice big, huge line and it will make it quite rounded. And what you want to do is roughly from the center underneath your sun, pop your pen down and then draw a line out from there. Hold your line at the end so we get a nice straight one. And roughly you want to just drag it towards this outside edge here, let's say about there. And then what you want to do is zoom in and just try and pop your pen as best you can on that line and draw a horizontal line out. Hold your pen and then also pop your finger on the screen to draw a perfect horizontal line. And then again from the exact same point, you want to come down a little bit at an angle like so. And then from that point here, we are going to drag out our plane wing all the way to roughly that sort of shape. And that's great with me, so I'm going to go all the way around from my start point to my end point, make sure I don't leave any gaps, and drag and drop the colour in, and we've got our plane wing. The only thing what we want to do here, just to aid the shading process of this, is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to tap on the layer of our wing, select the option of select. I'm going to go back to my layers, and the new layer I just created, I'm going to tap on that and select the option of mask, which what it will do is it will mean I can't draw outside sort of the shape of that plane wing, but it's not a clip layer. But we can make it a clip layer still, just to make sure everything's tidy. And what I like to do sometimes is I like to go to my color pick and double tap black. And what I like to do is from this point here, draw out a straight line like so. And again, go all the way around if you can. And don't worry if you didn't see your line, link it all up and drag and drop your color in. And I like to just simply drop this down to roughly around about 10%. And that will mean that we've got this black layer always on top. So whatever we do underneath, we will always have a nice casted shadow. And sometimes it's just an easy way of doing all your shadows. Now let's go to the end of the plane wing. So underneath the white layer that we created, let's create a new layer. And let's select any color you want. So at this point you can select the same color that I'm going to do. Roughly, let's pick this sort of dark purple. I'll pop it in the top right hand corner here. Maybe make that slightly darker. But ultimately it can be whatever airline sort of color you want your airline to be. And what we're going to do is from this point here, we're going to draw upwards at an angle like so. And then we're going to come across like so. And again, hold your pen at the end for straight line. Even pop your finger on the screen for a perfect horizontal line. And then just drag your line down like so. And then link up your shapes and drag and drop your color in. And now we've got the sort of silhouette almost of our wing and our little end point there as well. Now we want to create a new layer again underneath our wing. And then what we want to do is zoom in and with the monoline brush still selected, what we want to draw is essentially an ellipse like so, and quite a flat one, and hold your pen at the end and also pop your finger on the screen so you know it's horizontal like so, and then drag and drop our white color in like that and position it where you want it. So I only want the tip of it popping out there. And we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create another new layer underneath the one that we just created. And we're going to change the color and we're going to just select a slightly off grey. I'll pop it in this bottom right hand corner. And we're just going to simply draw a curved line down and then somewhat follow the contour of that ellipse and fill it in. And if you made any mistakes, you just erase that corner here like so. And that's our little plane engine underneath there. Now what you couldn't do at this point is merge the two together by pinching them, and then you could adjust them by warping them with the cursor and maybe adjust the shape until you're happy. The warp tool is pretty useful if you just need to make some manipulations in certain areas. But ultimately I'm just squishing this down a bit more like so until I get more of a point. And the only thing I'll quickly do is just rotate that now ever so slightly. So I warped it into more of a shape. I'm just going to drag that into position underneath the wing like that. And then what we can do, because we've already created it, let's swipe that layer to the left and select duplicate. Let's go to our cursor and select the option of uniform. Let's make it slightly bigger and then drag it over into position on the right hand side, like so. Now we've got our 2 wing engines underneath as well. Now what we can do is just go in and start to add in the shadows into this wing. So we can go to our layers and tap on our little bit on the end and make sure alpha lock is selected, and just tap on it there. And let's bring our opacity down of our airbrush to roughly 30% and bring our brush size down to roughly about 4%. Zoom in, and all we want to do is just add in some little dark shadow towards this bottom edge here and moving up towards the top. Maybe bring your brush size down to about 2%, like so, and you can just shadow out that little edge there very lightly, like that, until we end up with a darker section towards the middle and towards the end of the wing. And let's do the same for our wing. So let's go up to our wing and turn it on and off. And remember, we create this dark layer here, so we've always got the nice contrasted panel to the wing. And all we've got to do is tap on that and select the option of alpha lock as well. Continuing with what we literally just did, maybe bring it back up to 4%. You can just cast in the shadow, because obviously the sun and there's a little bit of a wing here, would cast a shadow on their wing, like so. And then the only other one I like to add in is just a little bit, let's make that a bit bigger, towards 10%, and just shadow out this edge here, like so. And maybe we just add in one little streak, too big, too dark. We add in a little streak just down the edge here, and you can hold your brush at the end to create a perfect line, and then it just brings a bit more of a contour to the wing. And now we just need to add in some little shadows onto these engines, and we can move on to the outer window. So let's go back to our layers and select the engine. Let's turn it on and off to see which one we've got. So it's the right hand one, same as before. Let's tap on that and select the option of alpha lock, and then let's zoom in. Keep your brush size as we had and the same opacity, and you just want to shadow in where the wing is overlapping the engine, like so. And let's do the exact same for the other engine. Turn it on and off so you know which one you're looking at. Tap on it and select the option of alpha lock. Same as before, just hold down and just layer in the color of our wing on top. Now what we can do is start to get started on the outer colors, as well as fill in this top area here. So what we want to get started on is this first ring here. So we're going to go to our layers and let's scroll down, and it should be the middle one here, and just turn it on and off to be sure. And what we want to do is we want to go to our spanner in the top left hand corner. We're going to go to canvas and we're going to select the option of drawing guide. Turn it on and then go to edit drawing guide and select the option of symmetry. And you should have a line straight down the middle. If you don't, make sure you go to options and select the option of vertical. Now in the top right, just hit done, and you'll end up with this line straight down the middle. Now if you've never seen this tool before, essentially anything I now draw on the right hand side will also draw on the left hand side. It's mirroring the design that you do. Now this is super useful. We're going to bring our airbrush settings back up to 100% opacity, because if we want to add in lighting, we don't have to go around the whole design and do it. We can just do it once and it'll be perfectly symmetrical on both sides, which means you get a nice balance of your colors. So what we'd first like to do is go to the layer. It should have assisted turned on. Just if it doesn't, just tap on it and select drawing assist. And that basically means for any layer in the future as well, you can tap on it and turn on the drawing assist so it applies to that layer. So you can choose to have it, even though it's turned on for the design, you can choose to have it on or off. Now, what we want to do is also select the option of alpha lock, which means we can't draw outside of our shape. And we're going to go to our colors and select the option of black by double tapping in the bottom left hand corner or the bottom corner. And we want to bring our brush size down to roughly 3%. And all we're drawing in now is a little shadow underneath the wing. Now let's just bring that down again. Let's just bring our opacity down to 30% so we can build up the color. We're drawing in a little shadow here where the window cover comes in. So you can see it's drawn it on the other side now, which is perfect. And what we also want to draw is then a little shadow down this left hand side or right hand side edge, sorry, all the way around into this corner like so. And what that's doing now is just creating a little bit more depth to the image, so it's, you know, creating the option of an illusion of height and depth to the window frame, like so. And we should have a nice one down the bottom here and also up the top. So that's the shadow in place. Now what we want to do is go to our colors, and we want to select this color here from the second row, second color, and we're just going to zoom in and just draw in some very faint bits of orange. Now you might have to zoom out or up your opacity at this point, but what I'm doing is it's just adding a soft glow. Now let's just zoom in on this bottom edge so you can see what I'm drawing. You see what we've done there. If I zoom in again, because I left a little bit of a gap, just added a little bit of colour just in there where the light from the sunset is making its way onto the window frame, like so. And if I zoom in, maybe we add a little bit towards the bottom. So I know I moved my canvas around quite a bit there, but essentially all you're doing is you're drawing a line all the way down and around like that and adding in your colour. And we could maybe go in and just punch it out a little bit more like that. And we can move backwards again a layer, so we move on to this dark section here, this one on the outer again, and kind of repeat the process. So let's go back to our layers. Let's tap on the very bottom layer here, which is this one. I'm going to tap on this and select the option of Alpha Lock, and also tap on it and select the option of Drawing Assist, which means now we get the nice reflection in the colours that we draw, as well as we can't draw outside of that frame. So now what we want to do is, now we've got those options turned on, is just add in some black towards the top half here where potentially the light isn't hitting because the shade's in the way. And then what we can do is go back to our colours and select the option of this second colour in the second row, and again on that inner edge, let's make our brush size quite small at like 4%. We're just going to stroke all the way down, and then also across the bottom half here, like so, and then you should get that nice build up of colour, and it's really starting to come together with its highlights and shadows. And what we can now do is we can maybe come back to this layer afterwards, but we can scroll up our layers and find our eclipse, which is the lid of the window frame, you know, the cover. And we firstly want to drag in the correct color, which I believe we're going to use this second one here on the bottom row. Drag and drop that into your eclipse, and now that that's sort of filled in with the correct color, it's starting to come together now. And same as before, we're going to tap on this layer and select the option of Alpha Lock, which means we can't draw outside of its shape. And we're going to tap on it and select the option of Drawing Assist, and then we're going to do the same options we just did. So the first one we're going to do is select black, and one thing to note is I added a little bit of a shadow towards this bottom edge here like that very quickly, and all that does is just create the illusion that that's more of a 3D object. And then with your brush size, maybe make it slightly bigger from what was 4% to now 10, and just stroke that top edge here like so. Just I'm going super lightly so that I can build up the color as always, like so. And maybe we continue to do a little bit more towards the center like that. And then what we also want to do is just add a little bit of the orange, just to make sure that, you know, the lighting is consistent. And from here, maybe we can just go in and circular motion, just add in a little bit of the orange on top of that shadow. Not too high though, something along those lines like that. The only thing I will go back in now and select black again, just round off that corner here because it was very light. Awesome. And now what we can do is go to our background layer now. And so let's scroll all the way back down, and just above our background layer, create a new one and drag that layer underneath the very back frame. And what I did was I created some glows. So let's again go to this blank layer that I created just above the background and behind everything else. Tap on that and select the option of drawing assist, and then go to your colors and select again that orange, or you can select the red. Let's go for the red on the second row, first one. And if I'm going to zoom in and tilt my canvas slightly, essentially what I'm doing is just creating beams of light in this direction until they meet the bottom. So I'm continuing to use my soft airbrush, and it's roughly around about the 35% mark. I mean, for this, you could maybe even make it higher because we could just reduce the opacity of the actual layer. So let's just go to 100% so you can see what I'm doing. And essentially, just like that, I'm creating little beams of light outwards. Like so. And because we turned on the drawing assist, it's now on both sides as well. So you can see, if I zoom in, it's creating these beams of light that are making their way outwards of the window, and not at the top because obviously the shade's in the way, blocking the light. And then we've got our beams of light. And what we could do there is maybe either lower the opacity of the layer by tapping on the N and lower that down, just if they're a bit too punchy, and maybe just round the actual frame itself, go in and add a little bit more color, like so. And then we've got our nice beams of light making its way through the design. What we can now do is, I want to just darken up the frame. The frame's slightly too bright. You could leave it as it is. This is just a personal touch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to, with that layer selected, which is the very dark, very bottom layer, I'm going to go in and select black again, and with my soft airbrush, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to darken up the frame ever so slightly like that. Let's undo that and do it again. Like so. I think it was slightly too bright to start with, and now it's slightly darker on this outer frame. You really get the sense that all the light is coming through there, and that's actually built into the wall of the cabin. And now what we can do is, the design is essentially done, so let's just go to our canvas and turn off the drawing guide. And then what I did in my actual piece on Instagram and TikTok was I ended up changing the colours of this and made it a slightly more blue hue. Now what I'll show you is how to do that. What you want to do is, the design's done, and at this point I want to make just changes, but the problem is that they're all on different layers that you can't make the change globally across everything. Now what you could do is simply select every single layer and pop it into a group by swiping every single layer across, making sure to select layer masks as well. You could select the option of group, collapse that group, and then you could go to the option of flatten. The problem with that is, if you do that and you later say, I would like to make the wing slightly bigger or smaller, you can't. It's flattened down. Everything you've done is now final. Now what you can do is, what I like to do is either swipe that to the left and select duplicate, and you'll duplicate the group, and then tap on that group and select the option of flatten. Now after I've flattened it down, you'll be able to see, if I turn off this underneath group, that the layer is in there, but it doesn't have a background, even though this background here is not attached to it. So the only thing you'd have to do is just create a new layer, drag it underneath the flattened layer, go to your colours and select the background colour I gave, drag and drop that onto the screen. Now you won't see any change, but what you can do is then pinch those two together, and that is the complete final design at the top. And then what I did was I went to adjustments, and I went to curves, and then layer, and then I went to blue, and just drag this bottom layer either across, which will create more of a green, or upwards ever so slightly, which will add in a more of a blue touch to it. Now the benefit to doing that, I felt, was it created a much nicer color palette, and so when you're done you can simply tap on adjustments like so, and then you end up with this lovely little sort of purpley look to it in terms of the background, but you've got these nice colors in the center. And that concludes today's tutorial. If you liked the tutorial, please feel free to drop a like below. Helps me know that you like the content and to keep making more of it. If you get stuck at all, please feel free to drop me a comment or otherwise a DM on Instagram. I'm always open if you have any queries or questions. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I post tutorials every week, and you can also have your say now on Instagram when I post my poll on my story about which tutorial you'd like to see this weekend. This tutorial is also part of a series of tutorials, and this is now episode number 10. So if you fancy having a crack at any more of my styles, you can take a look at the playlist on my YouTube channel.